We're back to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Beach Lifestyle Celebrity segment, TotalTutor.net for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, and again, LinkedIn, Neil Haley. And I'm so excited because I created another series, a monthly series regarding Roberto Clemente. Share stories about playing with Roberto from hopefully two of the World Series champion teams. The Pirates' fantastic season, this magical season. I said I wanted to keep on going, so I have reached out and have found some really awesome people. But first, I want to welcome the program producer, writer of the Clemente story, 21 Clemente stories, the baseball's last hero, Richard Rossi. Richard, thanks for calling.
Oh, you're most welcome, Neil. I have to pinch myself. I'm so excited here to be on the same show with Al Oliver, who, him and Clemente I grew up in Pittsburgh, as you know, Neil. And so, Al played, you played basically, I was born in 63, and for me, the magical baseball years were from the time I started school, kindergarten around 68. And when I became a teenager around 77, I kind of drifted away from baseball, got interested in girls and in music and other things. But in that period where I was so focused on baseball, Al played for the Pirates during that whole period from like 68 to 77. So it seems to me when I look back that Al was just with the Pirates during all the great times, of my growing up, the 71 series. And, to me, like, another hero that doesn't always get what he deserves, because Al hit over 300 career average. That's elite athlete right there. That's fantastic. So I'm so honored to be here.
Well, I want to welcome Al Oliver. I see how excited Richard is, and Richard's such a fantastic guy. Again, he should definitely, you got to check out his film. It's doing so successfully on Amazon and stuff. And anything about Clemente, because Clemente was one of my favorite players of all time. And Al Oliver, after checking out his numbers, I was blown away, Richard. I believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. So I want to welcome the program All-Star, National League Rookie of the Year, 22-year veteran baseball player, Al Oliver. Al, thanks for calling.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. So far, I've heard all positive things, and whenever you mention the name Roberto Clemente, it has to be good. And I'm just glad that someone finally decided to make a movie about this special guy, because he was a special man. And I have not seen the movie, but I could just imagine, from what I've heard from a few of my friends in New York, that it's something that I have to see. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to send you one as a gift, a small gift for all the joy you gave me growing up, Al. So off air, if you want to give your mailing address and number to Neil, he could relay it to me, and I'd be happy to get you one on Amazon and just have it sent to you, because it's a very small way of saying thank you for the joy you gave me in those, I think it was about 9 years or so that you played for the Pittsburgh Pirates when I was growing up there.
Well, thank you, Richard. I greatly appreciate that. And believe me, I've always said this: if the fans enjoyed me playing as much as I enjoyed playing, then we both broke even.
So, Al, let's go your first experience meeting Roberto Clemente, when you joined the Pirates, and your first experience with Roberto. I kind of want to go into
experience.
Yeah.
My first experience was in 1966 when I was on the roster, and I went to spring training. And at that time, we had spring training in Fort Myers, Florida. And, of course, you grew up with someone like Roberto Clemente because you always got his bubblegum card. And then all of a sudden, here I am in a major league camp with the great Roberto Clemente. And Clemente was very intimidating. When you were a young kid like I was, 19 years old at that time, and now you're in the same locker room, although we were kind of in the back at that time, the rookies, that's the way it went. But I really didn't talk to him much outside of just speaking to him. And he was one of those guys that when he walked, he walked with this confidence and being proud of who he was. I picked that up right off the bat. And the reason why I picked it up right off the bat, because he reminded me of my dad. My dad was like that, very proud man. he walked with his head up and just proud of who he was. And that was my first experience with him, was in spring training. Not knowing, say, 2 years later, at the end of 1968, that I would be called up to the Pirates and become a teammate of his.
Interesting, Richard. And again, we're just going to go back and forth types questions of his experiences with Clemente, so you can follow up question or ask another question to Al.
Okay.
Okay, Richard.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comparison, as to your father, because I think I remember you in another interview saying that you were when you entered the majors. My dad died pretty recently, and it threw me into a tailspin for a while mentally. And I had heard, I think you say before, that when you came up was about the time that your dad, who reminded you of Clemente, died. So you really must have been such a time emotionally, both the highs and the lows, I would imagine, Al.
It was. And when I look back at it, I just wonder, how I went through it so smoothly. I was the oldest child. And, of course, at that time, I was 20 years old, and my sister was a year and 5 months younger, and my brother, of course, was 12 years old. And, of course, I had lost my mother when I was 11 years old. So I was playing in Columbus, Ohio that year in AAA. And so I would come down to visit Dad because he was sick at that time. He had worked at a brickyard, and all of a sudden silicosis, that dust from the brickyard, had gotten into his system. And he's such a physical specimen, and to see him go downhill the way he did, was kind of a downer. But one thing about Dad, he never complained. He always had a lot of confidence in me. And I remember him telling me one time when I came to visit him back home, he said, son, the only thing I want you to do is take care of your brother and your sister. And that was his way of telling me to just be prepared, because he may not be around long. But, I left my dad's funeral going to become a major leaguer. After the funeral, I got in my car and drove to Pittsburgh to become a major leaguer. So I really didn't have a lot of time to grieve, but I felt that he was a very spiritual person, and I felt that he was in good hands with God. And I think that's the reason why I was able to cope with that and move on with my life, because I had to.
Absolutely. Al, so basically, once you arrived in Pittsburgh, would you say Clemente was the kind of person that you could approach, very easy to approach? Again, we all know when we work with different people, is it somebody, hey, Roberto, how are you? Or is it more like you wait to be approached by Roberto?
Well, when as a young player, you're kind of hesitant. You don't know how he's going to receive you. And in my case, he came to me, which it was a big sigh of relief, because I didn't have the nerve at that time to really go express myself. But once we began to talk, I knew right then that we had a lot in common. And what it was very similar things that we had in common. We always like to talk about life. Even in my interviews, I would rather talk about life. And I always put life into the questions that I had to answer. And I know at that time, sports writers at times really didn't want to hear about life. They wanted just to get a story. And so I had to give my story on life and also what has transpired and what they had asked me to give them. And so we were very similar in that regard, from a personality standpoint, because Vera, of course, his wife had always said the same thing. We were very similar personality-wise, and by no means as a ball player. I did take a backseat to him as a ball player. But he reminded me of my dad. He was intimidating, but once you went and sat down and talked with him, he was very engaging. He was very positive. And the one thing I always liked about him, he wouldn't tell you anything just to build you up. He wouldn't lie to you. And I'll be honest with you, after losing my dad, I remember him coming to me in 1970. And he told me, because, I was kind of disappointed because I was being platooned, because I had never been platooned before. And he came over to me and told me, just stay in shape, keep doing what you're doing, and one day you will be one of the best players to ever play this game.
Oh, wow.
And coming from him was very key in my career because I didn't have my dad to lean on, and I really didn't have anyone else to lean on. And so after he told me that, I said to myself, well, evidently this guy sees something in me. Although I had a lot of confidence, but yet still you can have a lot of confidence, but sometimes you need somebody that you can go to, someone who can trust you. And Roberto was that kind of guy. And he's the one that's responsible for me being able to make the transition from first base to center field.
Wow.
Because I had gone to San Juan to play winter ball in 1970 and to see if I could play center field. And once he gave the Pirates the go-ahead that he could play center field, that's when they traded Matty Alou.
Interesting.
So he meant a lot. It is, because the way my dad led me as a human being, Roberto Clemente led me as a major leaguer.
And Roberto, again, is my favorite player of all time. And that's when I found out the way I met Richard. It's very interesting, Al. Just a quick short story. I know the person who played Roberto Clemente in the movie's girlfriend, Siobhan Stoddard, two-time Olympian from Jamaica. So I needed a Jamaican athlete to introduce me to Richard Rossi. And I'm saying Richard Price so thanking himself because of our relationship and how we've promoted the movie and things like that. What other things, Richard, questions would you ask? I mean, so far you kind of portrayed a lot that in the movie, that Clemente was such a great teacher. Wouldn't you agree, Richard? And I'm sure that you want to follow up with another question with Al regarding that.
Well, I really love, Al, what you said about how he, blessed you and believed in you. It reminds me of the old, biblical stories, how the patriarch would bless his son, Abraham would speak something over Isaac. And he had kind of a old world, old-fashioned sensibility in many ways. We show in the film how he, went to Vera's father to ask his permission to date her and that sort of thing. So he really had a dignity and a class about him. And I guess I can only speculate if he were alive today, he wouldn't be thrilled at all with, the guys that are taking shortcuts and cheating, because guys like you, Al, and, Roberto's 3,000 hits, and Al, was just shy of 3,000 hits, I believe, in his career, that you guys did it the old-fashioned way. I mean, you guys really earned it. And, I mean, what do you think he would think of baseball today, Al? I know that's speculating. We don't really know, but what do you think he'd feel about today?
I know the one thing that he would frown on would be the lack of hustle. Because one thing about Roberto, he did hustle. We won many games just on his hustle. And we as young players to see him hustle down that first base line on ground balls and high choppers, there was no way in the world that we as younger players should not do the same. That's the one thing that I think that he would have frowned on. Another thing that he probably would have frowned on was the outfielders not hitting the cutoff man. He was a fundamentalist. He beat in fundamentals. And another thing is these guys are taking too many pitches, and especially fastballs right down the middle of the plate. And they're doing a lot of guessing at the plate rather than seeing the ball and hitting the ball. Those are some of the things that I can see him talking about today. And what he was real big on was giving back to the community. He would like to see more players today give back to the community, more players signing autographs for the fans who are responsible for these players making this big money today, because they have to pay to come to those turnstiles and see players play. But the players, for whatever the reason, will not sign autographs on a consistent basis with the fans.
Exactly, and now I think it's changed so much. Even when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, the 80s, it was much easier to get autographs and wait at the game and get big-name players to sign your autographs, but now they're looking to make the big money. All right, when we get back, more with Al Oliver and Richard Rossi, and the Clemente stories are continuing, and I came up with this, and I'm just like a kid in the candy store, and I'm sure Richard is as well, hearing Al talk about Roberto. You're listening to Total Tutor Show, powered by the Beach Lifestyle Celebrity segment, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Tutor Show, powered by the Beach Lifestyle celebrity segment. TotalTutor.net for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor. Neil S. Haley, Facebook, BeachLifestyle.com, SimplyG.com. I have many different websites, but I'm with Al Oliver, All-Star, and much, much more. I believe he should be a Hall of Famer. Pittsburgh Pirate, and Richard Rossi, baseball's last hero, 21 Clemente stories. He is the producer and writer, and he's seen such unbelievable growth of the show, of the movie and everything, and it's getting out there, and people like Al are learning about it through our connections thanks to LinkedIn. And Al, I think when you talked about the community, and do you feel that baseball in general, and I'm sure, Roberto, when you were saying this, but I wanted to kind of add to this whole community base, baseball is not as well involved in the community as, let's say, the Pittsburgh Steelers are. And what do you think the reason why baseball doesn't really have that great community outreach, especially, let's say, different sports teams compared to the days with Roberto and stuff? What do you think the reasons is?
Well, I feel that, number one, that basketball and football has done an outstanding job, first of all, as far as public relations by way of TV, social media. Baseball kind of has stood still. And for some reason, in baseball, and I know they have these kind of players, they don't have the players that can get out there on a national commercial and project a great image toward baseball. They seem to be lacking in that area. And I know I can speak, especially for Afro-Americans. Our young kids do not play baseball anymore, basically because they really don't have anyone to relate to. Just like when I was growing up, here in Southern Ohio, I looked at Cincinnati, and, of course, they had Frank Robinson and Vader Pinson. And they really have not gone out into the social media like they should. And I really feel that if they would see more people that look like you, then I think they would have more interest. Because I have two grandsons, 16 and 15, and they play all sports. But I just really believe that the teams themselves, and I'll use the Pirates as an example, the Pirates do not bring back enough of the players in the 70s.
Yeah. Because
when you look at the Pirates, you can think of the 70s. Exactly. And of course, naturally, the early 90s. But we don't get the opportunity to come back to Pittsburgh like we want to, because the fans in Pittsburgh do not forget you. I can come back to Pittsburgh, and it's almost like I never left there. And my last year was 1977. And I can still go into a restaurant, and all thing I hear is Scoop. And whenever I hear Scoop, I know it's a Pittsburgher. Because where I was in Germany about 5-6 years ago, and I heard someone say Scoop. And I said, that has to be a Pittsburgher. And lo and behold, it was. But I think that's what has to happen. The major league teams have to bring back the players that was associated with winning.
Absolutely.
And I think that would be a major step.
And help, and then make sure that they are still part of it as liaisons to the team, kind of like the Super Steelers, Super Steelers of the 70s. So going back to the whole Clemente stories, what we were able to see in Richard's film is one thing is definitely helping the community. One thing it talked about was 1960s World Series that Richard touched upon in his movie. After the great hit by Mazeroski, Clemente didn't celebrate with the rest of the players, Richard, and kind of explain that, and then I'm sure you have another question for Al.
Yeah, well, they were wondering where Roberto was, and he was among the fans in the streets signing autographs, celebrating. He would be there till the last autograph was signed. And that was the wonderful era back then, like Al was referring to. I played hooky and would sit in the bleachers out in the general admission dollar seats there and sneak into the locker. I would go down around the stadium to where the players' entrance was, and players would drive up, and, without exception, they would see, me as a kid outside the locker room. They would stop, sign an autograph, and, I think, like Al said, it's depressing when, the Pirates went through a streak of the longest losing, record in the history of sports. They had a great year this year, thankfully. But, I totally can speak as a Pittsburgh that Al's right. I mean, I kind of escape into the glory days. Making this film for me was a way to feel those wonderful feelings, when Al was out there in center field and Roberto and right and, Bob Robertson on first, and then that winning team, that they had, Hebner and Sangan and Blas, all the rest. That, for a fan, bringing, attention to these guys that gave us that great run, and they stayed together, too. I mean,
yes.
Like Al said, Al was with the Bucks for 9 years, and during that period, I mean, there are a few changes, of course, but that core lineup, of Stargell and Oliver and Clemente and those core guys, for me, as a kid growing up, stayed together a lot more too, and gave us a feeling of a team. And I don't begrudge the free agency and the athletes making money, but does it seem to you, looking back, Al, like there was more of a longevity of a core team in baseball more so than today? I mean, do you think that's the case?
It was, and just like the the players that you're talking about, the team, say, in 1971, a lot of us came up through the minor league system, and we played together in the minor leagues, and we got to know each other, and we basically came to the Pirates in the major leagues at the same time. And we just blended in so well with Stargell, Mazeroski, and Clemente, and, of course, Steve Blas at that time, was basically the ace of the pitching staff. And so that's why we were able to win, because we were just as confident in ourselves as they were in themselves. And that's the reason why we were able to win in the 70s. We won those divisional championships. But you said something that's very key in this movie, and I'm glad you brought it out. Where was he celebrating the world championship? Well, that's a side that will surprise a lot of people because they just didn't know. And these kind of things about Roberto was never written. It was always talking about him being a hypochondriac, in which he was not, because hypochondriacs just don't get 3,000 hits. and hypochondriacs just don't play like he could play. But I'm glad that side of him was brought out, because if you look at that, how did he leave us? Doing something for somebody else.
Yes.
And he did it from his heart. And when you do things from your heart, you wake up in the morning. You decide to go to the hospital and visit people. You don't call the news media. You go on your own. And these are things that he did throughout his career that people just didn't know. And I am so glad that somebody finally has put out a movie. I heard a lot of reasons why there wasn't a movie earlier. They say, well, nobody could throw like him. No one could run down the right field line and spin and throw. Nobody could hit like him. Well, all those things are true. But finally, there is a movie, and I just hope that as many people can see this movie, although it's been a long time since he's been gone, this will add on to his legacy once they see this movie.
Absolutely, Al. And you answered questions about his unbelievable talent. We've talked about the community. What would you like to share about Roberto that many people here do not know about Roberto, in your experiences and being with him?
The one thing that I will always remember about him, he was for real. There are so many players and people in our society will tell you certain things just to make you feel good. But Roberto, yes, he was a feel-good person. He definitely wanted a person to feel good. But he wouldn't lie to the news media. He wasn't the greatest diplomat in the world when it came down to answering questions to the news media. He told it the way that it was. He spoke from his heart. And as a writer and a person of the news media, I would want someone to speak from their heart and not from their mouth. And that's the thing that will always be stamped and edged in my mind, is that Roberto did things from the heart and not from his mouth as far as speaking. And that's the thing that I will always remember about him. They weren't ready for him especially early in his career, with his comments. I know someone had a question asked him one time, I heard, they asked him who was the best player, him or Willie Mays. They say that's an unfair question to ask Roberto. I'm kind of surprised whoever the writer asked that question. I'm surprised that he wasn't fired. But, you can't put people on the spot like that. And knowing Roberto, he thought that he was the best. And I would say to this day, Roberto Clemente did not have to take a backseat to no player that I ever saw.
Wow.
And I played against the best ones. Mays, Aaron, they all did things differently. And I say this, if you ask Dusty Baker, he would say Hank Aaron. If Bobby Bonds was still living, he would say Willie Mays. Well, you're speaking to Al Oliver today, and I say Roberto Clemente.
All right.
When you speak of greatness, it comes down to a matter of choice.
All right, Richard, we have one more question, and you get one more question for Al Oliver. I'm sure you had 1,000 of them in your head the last week thinking about this, because, I was if I was speaking, I remember Al in a way, but when I was a fan in the 79, he already left. So what question do you have for Al Oliver about Roberto Clemente, Richard?
Well, I just want to say that Al Oliver has, the same humanitarian qualities I've seen from people I know in Ohio, and he's a humble person and, doesn't toot his own horn. I mean, the Bible says something in Proverbs about, let another man's lips praise thee and not thine own, but Al has done a lot of community work himself in Ohio, and I know from people in that community that, the reason we call the film about Clemente baseball's last hero is it was his heart, like Al said. It was beyond his baseball abilities. He had the heart. And, Al has quietly and humbly done a lot of those things, too. So I don't know if you're comfortable speaking on this, Al, but do you mind saying some of the things that you've done? Because I know you've, in terms of the community, because you've done a lot for the less fortunate. I know that from, just people that I have a lot of contacts in Ohio as well that, you've done the same type of thing that Roberto did in the community.
Well, basically what I do now, I am a motivational speaker. I do travel all over the world doing motivational speaking. I am involved with the Kiwanis. I'm a Kiwanian. Mm-hmm. I serve on the Children's Services Board. I serve on a mural board here in Portsmouth. We have some nice murals down here. It's unbelievable what they've done. As far as kids are concerned, I put on camps. I serve as a deacon, ordained deacon as well, and I enjoyed that scripture that you were throwing out there. I said, I was starting to say amen. But anything that people need here in South County or any way I can be of any service, I've always been there, and they know it. And I think that's the best way that I can put it. I am a servant.
That's great.
And I'm a servant of the people, and I'm a servant of God.
Fantastic. Al, where can we find information on you and learn more about you? And so our listeners out there, if they want to have you come out and speak to them, an organization, or ultimately even autograph signing, especially when what's happening now with the resurgence of the Pirates, where can we find info?
Right. Well, I have a site. You just basically go to Al Oliver, and that would take you, aloliver.com, that would take you right to my site. And that will give you the information in which you need.
Fantastic. And Richard, more information on you?
The Facebook site for the movie is facebook.com/Clemente movie.
Fantastic. You guys are awesome. Al, I'm going to have you back just to talk about your career, talk about the work in the community, and especially your story, because I know you're looking to write a book. And Richard, look forward to next month's segment. So, guys, take care, and you were awesome. What a great segment, and I appreciate you taking all the time in the world to talk to me.
I enjoyed talking to you guys.
All right, cool.
What a blessing.
Too. Me too. Take care, guys. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to Total Tutor Show, powered by the Beach Lifestyle Celebrity segment, and we'll be back in just a moment.